Hello and welcome to Tippcast. It's a Shane Fest this week. Myself, Shane Stapletons, and Shane Brophy as ever from the Nina Guardian. But we're joined by my other namesake from Golden-Kilfeacle, Shane Stapletons. No doubt we'll end up answering each other's questions, but I suppose that's just par for the course. How are the two Shanes doing?
Sure, we're flying it, sure.
Good now, Saint. How are you?
I'm not too bad at all. Now we've simplified it straight away already. We've gone with the Saint from my end, the old family nickname. That'll make things a little bit easier. If you're joining us on Twitter, YouTube or Facebook, get your comments in. Let us know what you want us to talk about. It was obviously a big weekend for the Tipperary hurlers, seeing off Clare in the Munster semi-final. We know now that we're going to face Limerick in a couple of weeks' time in the Munster hurling final. I'll just start off with you, Mr. Brophy. Were you impressed with Tipperary? Obviously, I met you afterwards at the Gaelic grounds and we had it out a little bit. But what do you want to tell the Tippcast viewers out there about Tip's performance?
When we're coming out of the ground, I was a bit flat about what I saw. Maybe it was because the first 15 minutes and the last 10 were probably the things I focused on when we were edgy and a bit off the pace. But I think overall, when I looked at it second time, it was a solid enough start to the championship, like 323 to 222. I definitely think as the match went on, we settled down an awful lot. I think that third quarter, admittedly, helped by the penalty goal, we got into a rhythm there. The half-back line got on top. Pádraig Maher, after a very, very shaky start, really came into the game in the second half. And I still think with Jake Morris probably had one of his best games overall. Can get best games for Tipperary in the championship. The same for Dan McCormack. We got probably what we wanted out of Michael Breen at wing forward, stroke midfield, hard work, getting up and down the field, and then you had Seamus Cannon leading the way. Like I thought, arguably it was one of his best performances just for what he gave. Like 1-1, he scored 1-1, but like his creativity, five assists, and then he also assisted. He also had a goal chance saved, and he assisted Jake Morris for his goal chance that was saved by Quilligan. I just thought, as first games go, looking a bit rusty. Clare having the advantage of a game before under a belt, probably a good start to their campaign. And I suppose they're in the Munster final. They're guaranteed to be hurling till the August bank holiday weekend, and I think that has to be the first box ticked. And I think there's an element of relief that. Getting through that semi-final was the important one, because that qualifier route is deadly, and you're playing one, potentially two extra games to get to a quarter final, and Tip have avoided that.
Yeah, and Golden, Shane, what did you make of Tipperary? Made hard work for it in the first half, conceded a couple of goals, but obviously began to take over.
Yeah, and even that will stand to him. I was like Shane Brophy. I thought it was a really good performance. Because every year, it's been well documented, the birth certs of Brendan and Paddy and Noel have been widely publicised, and the appetite for them is still there. I think they settle in really well. Is there room for improvement? Certainly is, but I thought it was a game that we were going to win regardless of the black card. Obviously, that's maybe my tip sunglasses on here, but I was actually just impressed with him. Shape was good. I think tackling wise, they were strong. Puckouts were decent, and free scoring as well, with loads of goal chances. And if we got all them goals, we might be kind of looking at a Limerick match in a Munster final and say, oh, we probably need goals to beat Limerick, and we didn't get them all the last day. And I think there's a lot of hope going forward with this group, because the talent is certainly there, the work rate is certainly there. They seem to be in good shape. Hopefully now they could maybe give Limerick a real test in the Munster final, and I think there's a big run in All Ireland Championship after that.
What about you, or Saint? What was your? Now that you had longer to reflect on it.
Well, I suppose there were plenty of things that we can crib about if we want to, as Tipperary sort of supporters. But in the heel of the hunt, you did get the result. I mean, that was a big thing here. And shaky and all as it was at the start. And I know you mentioned that Paddy Maher had a shaky start to the game, and he did, and he slipped a couple of times. And I mean, this is sort of the thing, you might lunge into the odd tackle as you become a bit of an older player, because maybe you don't kind of trust that. You kind of feel like you need to nearly get to the ball first, or your chances of actually getting back on a player are probably narrowed up. But when Tipperary got on top and when Paddy got onto possession, like, he is some man to use the ball. I'd say he must have got on the ball 10 or 12 times, and all bar once he used it absolutely brilliantly.
Like those long clearances off the back foot are gone. Like
there, yeah. I mean, I just don't know if playing him in full back is the place to be. And to be honest, I know we've kind of talked about him a couple of times in recent weeks. Like, he has been an absolute legend for Tipperary, but it's very difficult because at times he seems to be kind of left a little bit exposed. And the matchup that worked out was against Ian Galvin. And it just seems like a matchup that Tipperary wouldn't necessarily want back there. And because you're picking a few older players, and not just older players, but players with an awful lot of miles on the clock across the board, you wonder about, is there enough versatility in some of that backline, so that, like, if you're playing against like what happens against Limerick in a Munster final, if you've Graham Mulcahy and Peter Casey in the forward line, and you also have Aaron Gallan, but maybe you want to put Barry Heffernan on Aaron Gallan, then, you know, like, are some of the older players going to be left isolated on Graham Mulcahy, or, you know, players like that? So I just think the way we're setting up at the moment, I feel like we're offering mismatches to the opposition. Do you think that's fair or unfair?
Possibly so. Like, I thought when the team was announced last Friday, I thought it was a strange selection purely on the basis that we had, especially the midfield and the half forward line, because we hadn't seen that combination in the league at all. We hadn't seen Breen and Noel McGrath. Okay, Breen played wing forward, Dan McCormick went midfield. We hadn't seen that combination in the league at all. And you just sensed that maybe was it a selection to play Clare only, and they'll look at something else after that, or was it a form selection? You're looking at it afterwards, you think, like, was there a lack of trust in the other guys that had, like, Paddy Cadell had a decent league, didn't start. Alan Flynn had I thought he had a very good league, didn't start, but he came on and he was very, very good. I thought Willie Connors, while he scored a point, he didn't do an awful lot, but his nuisance factor low, and I thought was, particularly in the full forward line, he held up the ball. Like, there was an awful lot of ball in the first half that Clare cornerbacks were coming out with it. Like, anything that, while Willie didn't get on win an awful lot, he made sure that it wasn't clean ball that was coming out with scruffy possession. It gave our midfield and half-backs a chance to settle when Clare did come out. So, like, I suppose if you look at the four winning teams last weekend, Dublin, Kilkenny, Limerick, I suppose I don't think nobody set down a marker in the championship at all. Like, no, you can't say Limerick are still the team to beat, but none of the four winning teams last weekend have produced a performance to say, okay, we can hang your hat on that. I think we'll probably learn a lot more over the next few weeks, and I just think maybe it was just a game to get out of the way. There's no way I could see that starting 15 being able to counteract Limerick. I think definitely there's going to have to be more legs, maybe a Flynn or a Cadell coming in. I think they got away with it, I think, against Clare. But I definitely, from what we saw in the league, I thought it was a strange selection.
Yeah, Golden, Shane, just to lean on your experiences. I mean, you can follow up what Shane has said there about the team, but also just to lean on your own experiences being involved with Tipperary footballers and Liam Kearns, and, you know, being a coach there and a selector, and, you know, playing that first championship match. What's it like in terms of, like, do you really care if you had a flawless performance after the first game? Is it about just getting through it? And even knowing that Clare had played the week before, so maybe they had a bit more sharpness. But how do you tend to evaluate that first championship match of the season? Do you read into it too much?
No, I suppose you actually do read into it an awful lot, because it is even when you're playing the league and when you have your possible versus probables matches in, or A versus Bs, whatever you want to call them in Dr. Morris, you're always kind of trying to wonder how will they click and will it go flat. And let's say we suffered the consequence of that over the years. Like, I know people will say we took our eye off the ball a couple of years ago against Limerick, but we were trying to get ready for Cork a week later if we beat Limerick as well, you know. And there's kind of an element of that. I suppose just my experience with Liam Kearns, I learned a lot from. He didn't have six. He didn't really have a full back or centre back, or there was a lot of work done on matchups. And let's say like the way Shane Brophy is talking there, I think Limerick are a team that you have to get your matchups right. And Liam Kearns would have worked on that weeks and weeks and months out. And let's say, like, I know players like Shane O'Connell or Alan Campbell or whatever, he would always bring him back to, right, okay, look, you're going to be marking Connolly or Hurley or whoever it might have been. And I think by Liam Sheedy, I think behind the scenes, I think he's going to be talking to Paddy or or Seamus or whoever about, let's say, right, look, against Limerick now we'll need you because to do this X, Y, Z, because I think that Tip always know to win an All-Ireland we're going to have to beat Limerick. Now, whether we have to beat him twice is not ideal, and that's probably the crux of meeting in Munster final, but I think the lads have a big game in them against Limerick. I don't think they're going to maybe make the mistakes that we did in the past, and like that experience has to prove for something. And you'll be hoping Limerick will have an off day against us sometime. But I just think, going back to it, what you said, Saint, like I just think that a Tip Limerick match is going to be the be all and end all for this team, and they will almost be judged on this like we were against Kilkenny back in 19, and and before that. So I think there's going to be a huge game in them. Just matchup wise.
Yeah, without doubt.
I think it's the perfect game for Tip at this stage. Like, because look, they're hearing the same things we are. Limerick have the Indian sign over, especially results wise. They do. That you have this thing of Tip only won the 19 All Ireland because Limerick lost the semi final. Like, you can be sure the Tip players have heard all this, and Liam Sheedy is going to have his players absolutely ready for this. There's no point saying otherwise. The results over against Limerick in recent times haven't been good, but you could point to the fact that maybe that 2019 Munster final was played in Limerick's backyard with probably 35,000 of their own rabid fans in there. Like, that was tough, and like, we didn't hurl well in the day. Limerick were excellent that day, but there's no doubt Tip didn't really fire an awful lot in that Munster final. And then you go to last year, like, you had Pádraig Maher, you had Barry Heffernan, you had Bubbles all carrying injuries into the match. You had John and Noel McGrath, poor form, but look, John McGrath's form probably is still off looking at last weekend. And plus the fact that Limerick had a game the weekend before against Clare, which Tip came in very, very stale, like, with not even challenge right. So look, I think we're better set up to take on Limerick on Sunday week. And I think I just feel there's a big performance coming from Tipperary.
You did say that the last day, though, Shane. You did say it was a big performance. Would you consider this a big performance? Like, 323 is very good score, and I mean, we relied so heavily on that black card. Obviously, none of us wanted it. I was disgusted when the black card and the penalty was given, because it's a triple whammy. So obviously, Aidan McCarthy's on a yellow for the rest of the game. He's also gone for 10 minutes. It's a ridiculous penalty. And then they imploded. Clare did implode there over the course of that, lost by 2-4 to 2. How did Kilkenny do when they went down to 14 men? They got on pretty well with it. Peter Casey got the yellow card and sin bin for Limerick.
But I think it was the nature of the sin bin. Like, you could understand, Kilkenny didn't really have to suffer mentally from their sin bin because it was deserved.
It's big boy stuff, though. Come on, however it happens, you have to just accept it, and you can't just capitulate and then everyone say, poor ye, sure, look, we understand on this occasion. Why wouldn't you collapse? So because it was a wrongful black card.
So I can understand maybe why they felt a little stunned, because like it was an awful decision. Like, it wasn't what the cynical foul penalty was brought in for. Not that type of decision.
Yeah.
The only thing, though, I'd say about it, I think maybe going back to Paddy Maher, I think it gave us a shot in the arm. I think it really settled us down and kind of says, right, look, we can see blood here now. We can kind of go for it. Kind of freed up Paddy, and then it just, like, everyone else calmed down. Probably the one thing that we should have mentioned earlier on, it probably just shows the importance of Carl Barrett again. He's unique in that back line. And when he picked up, like, the first one wasn't yellow either. But let's say when he kind of fouled Tony Kelly again, you are kind of wondering, like, can we? I won't say survive, but if we were to lose, him in another big game, a tighter game, you'd be kind of looking to the bench there and kind of saying, we just don't have that explosive cornerback style, even coming out with the ball, let alone the man marking, and that you'd be hoping a Tip match in the future isn't going to come down to a decision like that either.
Yeah, I just wonder, Shane, or saying, is it something that Liam Sheedy's maybe got to use with the media over the next 10 days? It's like, I put it out on Sunday night that I think Cathal Barrett's getting a raw deal off referees, that they're almost waiting to book him for anything, like, and like his first foul was like, it was a booking, and I was watch back the incident on TV after, and James Owens was, Cathal, what's it that for? And Owens more or less said, persistent fouling. But Cahill hadn't conceded a free in the first half. How could it be for persistent foul? I just like, and it was the first yellow card that got him against Galway too, and that wasn't the second one. Like, okay, the foul on Tony Kelly in the second half, the second foul, technically he should have been booked for that one. Like but like, and like, Tipperary would have felt very aggrieved then that he would have been down to sent off. So I just think he's rightfully lauded as one of the best cornerbacks in the game, but yet I just think he just gets picked on too often by officials.
Yeah, absolutely. Like people just kind of have decided that he's this combative player, and he's been involved in a few incidences. And I think the Richie Hogan incident in 2019 is probably following him around, because it's kind of one of these things whereby, let's say you watch a soccer match and you see somebody complaining after a big, massive decision. Let's say the referee gets kind of harangued for the rest of the game because he gave a yellow card one way and then he's looking to even it up. It's as if, like with the Cahill Barrett thing, that the hurling universe is almost trying to even it up with him. But like the game last year against Galway, that was a joke that he got sent off there. And I think that, the calls were coming. They were trying to more or less, I'm not saying that Clare were looking to get him sent off, but it just always feels like he's up against it. Do you sense that, or do you ever sense that on the sideline yourself, Shane?
Oh yeah, big time. And listen, like even as the hopefully, fingers crossed, the grounds will start to fill up with more supporters. You can see, like, the minute he fouls now, let's say, like, the crowd are baying for blood, and definitely, I think some people, and it probably depends on even the person you're marking. So let's say, like, Tony Kelly would be almost liked by the referee, rightly so. He's like one of the best players that's ever graced the field. But I think it's the Clare supporters, like, just didn't want Tony Kelly touched. You know what I mean? And I don't know. It's just the way and see, fellas like that, I think he's so aggressive on the way out. He clips, he digs, whatever. So I kind of think people then, when they have the ball, they're going to make the most of any kind of contact from Cahill. But he's just a special player, and he's real important. He's a massive role to play for us this year.
So there's no one else in Tip quite like him, is it? Like, no. There might be one or two young lads that can make a play for that in the past, but cornerbacks aren't growing on trees. Even Barry Heffernan, in some respects, you'd nearly rather have him in the half back line, but you can totally understand why he's used further back.
And probably, Shane, is probably the hardest place to blood a player as well. I know you can give him time in the league, but like, you're going into corner forward and you're marking, you could, like, Kilkenny could try and pull TJ Reid onto you. You could be marking Alan Gillan. It's an impossible place. You have to have massive confidence for there, and it could be a problem area for Tip in the future.
Do you see any changes to the team, Shane Brophy? Do you see, like, John McGrath? Obviously, we know how classy he has been throughout the course of his career, but it's just not happening for him at the moment. Paul Flanagan certainly won that battle in the first half. Do you see John McGrath staying in the team? I don't think any of us expected to see Noel McGrath being taken off in the 48 minutes, but he did come off, and Alan Flynn did really, really well. Do you expect those guys to retain their places? Do you see it being changed up much by
I definitely think there'll be a change up. I think we have to sacrifice the forward against Limerick. I definitely do think we need a bit more physicality around the middle third, maybe if it is Alan Flynn or a Paddy Cadell. And it might just have to be that John has to be the guy to come off the bench in the second half. I did think the timing of the Noel McGrath one was strange. I think he assisted about 5 points in the game. Like, even though he wasn't on the scoreboard, he was still in for extra. I thought it was a little early, but look, the decision was fully justified. Alan Flynn came on. He scored 2 points. He drove a ball wide, but his positional sense was excellent. Like, the couple of long range points he got, he made sure he was in the right position. One, to offer himself to Seamus Callan, and then two, I think it was a pass from either Pádraig Maher or Brendan Maher out of defence. They were able to see Alan Flynn completely on his own in the middle of the field, and he stuck it over the bar. So I definitely think we have to adapt the team slightly, not a huge amount, to play Limerick. Because, like, essentially we know what Limerick are going to play. We know. I think the one with Limerick is going to be will Kyle Hayes go back into the forwards? Because I just think that with the form of Tom Morrissey and the way that maybe that Dan Morrissey couldn't make the team last weekend, could be the situation where, to accommodate Dan Morrissey, you push Kyle back up the field and drop Tom. So that would be the only thing of what happens there. Like, but look, I think we were caught out last year a bit with Kyle or with Cian Hayes. Like we definitely got flummoxed with that when he went in centre forward. I don't think we're going to get caught in some of those matchups like we were last year. I think like Ronan Maher struggled and Gillane last year. I think Barry Heffernan probably will be the man to go on him this time. Maybe Barrett probably on maybe Seamus Flanagan, maybe Paddy Maher on Flanagan, and maybe Barrett on Casey. But then you don't want Barrett getting dragged too far out the field following Casey either. So look, it's I'm sure that the brains trust and Tip are going to have a lot of thinking to do over the next 10 days.
But then, Golden Shane, is that not the big issue for Tipperary there? As Shane Brophy's going through some of the possible matchups, all I'm thinking is, well, that leaves X on Y. So there's mismatches in the Tipperary backline, and I can't really see too many in the Limericks. And maybe you could say certain Tip forwards, like if Jake Morris got space and maybe went out wing forward on Diarmaid Burns, for example, that he'd be able to get away from him. But Limerick just don't ever seem to leave that space.
No, exactly, and it's the sum of the parts for, like, individually they're brilliant, but it's the sum of the parts for Limerick too. And like I was thinking of when Michael Breen went wing forward the last time, I was kind of thinking, right, is this now Munster final that they're going to look for maybe Michael Breen and Dan McCormack on the two wings of Diarmaid Burns and Kyle Hayes, you know? But then you're kind of saying, God, William O'Donoghue is a big man to be leaving in the middle of the field as well, with maybe Alan Flynn or Noel McGrath or someone. So yeah, it's a real strange one. I think I definitely would see the half line playing really far out. I'd be playing maybe Shamey and Fordy up top, maybe on their own for a while, and just like using Jake's pace around the middle of the field. I think Willie Connors will have a big role to play, and Alan Flynn, as I said. It's just with John, like John is absolutely gifted, and he nearly walks onto Tips starting six forwards year after year. But I don't know, is it just maybe with I saw with football, with, let's say you want, let's say, Philip Austin, or you want Brian Fox or Josh Keane, you want lads to do almost more work because you've the talents of maybe Conor Sweeney and Michael Quinlivan. And I wonder, is it kind of gone that way, that just a balance of John maybe kind of coming out and looking for a loose ball and getting a score or two is just surpassed by, okay, work. And it's a very hard balance to get. And when you have a forward line of Shamey, Bubbles, Fordy, you know, like it, all of them can't work like Dan McCormack and Michael Breen can, and then be the inside scoring threat. So I suppose it's, look, in Liam Sheedy we trust, and Naim O'Shea we trust. So I think they will definitely have a plan up their sleeve.
Yeah, I just one player I wanted to mention, and I think you can be easy to take him for granted. I think is Jason Ford. Like, I just think he's quietly settling into arguably being one of our most important players. Like, and he doesn't get an awful lot of the star treatment. He just goes about his business so effectively, takes his frees. He's a brilliant penalty taker. He can nail long range shots. Look at his sideline cut there the last day. Mm. He knocked it over. The ref blew the whistle to say I wasn't ready. He puts it down and he knocks it over the second time. I just think he's really settled into. I just think he's really settling into such an important player in our team.
And the decision making, Shane, I think it's just like his decision making is so good. He's so calm. He's brilliant.
But like you mentioned the word calm there, and that was one of the big things that stood out to me from a Tipperary point of view. Like, we often talk about, you know, where there might be mismatches and problems for Tipperary, but like there are lots of positives too. And the calmness for Tipperary to concede a goal early on, for Clare to put up 1-7 in the first 11 minutes, they scored their first 9 chances. It feels like everything is going wrong for Tip, but there's such experience in that team. Fine, they're a little bit older than maybe you'd like, but then they put together a run of 1-5 to a point. Didn't freak out before half time when that goal went in even, and then when they got the spare man, like as you've talked about already, Shane Brophy, they had the calmness to use it, and Paddy Maher started taking over. And then Clare were the ones that started to panic and hit long-range wides and long-range frees from 100 yards. And the other thing, when I rewatched the game again this morning, one thing that had annoyed me last year was, I think against Cork, there was something like 9 or 10 shots from 100 yards from play from the backs over the course of the game. There was a bit more calmness on the ball, and like, if Tipperary can work those 30, 40-yard stick passes into their game, while also, I mean, I'm not sure where we're going to get lads who are able to beat players in a one-on-one situation. This is the thing about, you know, the likes of a Tony Kelly or a lot of these Limerick players. When they get the ball, they're able to turn, beat a man, and then create a 2-on-1. Tipperary don't probably have enough of that. But there's a lot of good in that performance against Clare too.
Oh, definitely. I have no doubt about it. I think as a starter performance, it's a good base to work from. I think that there will have to be more to win a Munster final and to win an All-Ireland. I suppose we can't. I would have thought maybe like Barry Hogan had a good debut in goals, but like our retention rate from puck out still wasn't hectic. Like it took until the second half before we got our inside forwards to hold up the ball better. I thought it came out a bit too easy in the first half, but definitely like Shamey Callan and Willie Connors definitely as a two-man inside line definitely held the ball up better. Bubbles gave John Conlon a lot of trouble at centre forward, just that awkward position there. So I could see Bubbles maybe going there against Declan Hannon just to give him a bit of Hannon can't afford to sit back too much because Bubbles can knock balls over from 40, 50, 60 yards. So like I think Limerick are going to be favourites on the week. Tip are going to be coming in as underdogs, and I just think the little bit of chatter maybe from other people will I think Sheedy and the boys will get after the group. I think you'd love to see maybe a bit more from the bench, and maybe you'll have used the bench a bit more. Like Dylan Quirk hit up wide. He came in, looked a bit nervous again, like fidgety enough rising the ball, like he was, I think, against Limerick in the first league game. So look, it's the bench. I suppose apart from a couple of players, does look a bit light. But look, we saw 2019. We thought the bench was a bit light. Then against Wexford and Kilkenny, that had big games. So look, it's I think we're going in there in good stead. I don't think. Like it's hard to know what to expect. Like Limerick they won by 8 points, but they weren't hectic. I thought there was a 15-minute spell in the second half where Limerick looked very, very ordinary. I think they went without a score for about 11, 12 minutes, but just Cork weren't good enough to take advantage of it. Like some of the ball they hit in was dreadful. Like some of the wides they hit in that period from Cork was terrible. And I don't think if Limerick have that sort of flat period again, I don't think Tip will be as accommodating.
Yeah, I have to say, I thought Jake Morris was very good. Like one or two of the comments that I got after the game was, well, maybe we could drop Jake Morris, start Willie Connors and bring him on later. But I thought he was really good. Got 3 points. Obviously, the black card was a ridiculous decision. Yeah. But, you know, he won that free in a dangerous area, solo and straight at goal. And this was out in the half-forward line because, you know, we've often talked about maybe Tip have a forward line that has, you know, 4 corner forwards. And, like, we probably need him to step up and take over more of the load because he does have such class. Like Seamus Callan, you can see he's not fully moving freely, or I feel like he's not quite up to his full sharpness yet. He scored 1-1. The goal was a fluke, of course. Eibhear Quilligan with a big mistake there. But some of his assists, like these things where he's falling over and he's slapping a ball back to 4+1. I'm not sure who the other one was. But do you look at that Limerick performance against Cork? They won 2-22 to 1-17. Now, there was an element of them, you know, that Cork were forcing goals towards the end of the game, and, you know, that kind of bloats the scoreline to some degree. Both teams hit an awful lot of wides, but Cork's puck out imploded. This is an area I'd be very worried about for Tipperary going into this Munster final, and you've already kind of flagged that, Shane. But do you look at that Limerick performance against Cork and think, well, they're not perfect either, and if Cork can be that competitive, despite their own puck out imploding in this game, which definitely did, Golden Shane, do you see an opportunity whereby Tip can feel like, right, we're not going into this and it's going to be the same as the last couple of years, leaving out that round robin Munster game a couple of years ago? Like, do you go into this are you kind of fearing the worst, or do you think there's an opportunity here?
What's sitting a bit uneasy with me is that, let's say, like, we might have to face them later in the championship, and that's not being cocky. That's just being right. Look, in our best form, and we keep, like, we can't lose another Bonnermar or anyone like that off that starting 15 or 16 or 17, you know. But I would prefer to maybe beat Limerick in the All-Ireland Championship season. Now, you know what I mean? That's if we had to meet them then. But no, I think we can beat Limerick. I think little things like we spoke about, like even you said there about the goal before half-time, that changed Liam Sheedy's team talk, right? Where after coming back, we had a bad start. We came back next minute, then like a flick of a switch, Tony Kelly goal. Okay, therefore that changes everything. You know, we've to I won't say chase the game, but we've to we've to get back at it here. The other thing about the Jake Morris, I think Jake always starts just because of his pace. And if we're like Limerick are very good at, as you said, getting the plus ones. Like if we could do that, we have the finishers like Sashemi, Bubbles, John, Jason Ford, whoever could be the plus one, they will score goals. And Jake Morris probably has to be the one to break that line and take fellas on. Looking at Limerick, I know it sounds strange, but probably Declan Hannon is probably the one person you could maybe focus on. So if he sits too far, Bubbles or John McGrath or Jason Ford might hit some from downtown. If you maybe get a little run at him, is there a few fouls in him, or does he leave an odd one through? That's maybe a bit of a stretch, but it's just going to be a really hard one. I ultimately think back to if Limerick aren't at it, if they're a small bit complacent, I think they can be beaten. But if they show the form of maybe last year or a couple of years ago, it's going to be a big test for everyone to beat him.
Yeah, and like as you, Shane Brophy, said many times before, it was a bit of a perfect storm with injuries and everything, and you'd hope also that summer hurling would suit Tipperary a little bit better.
I don't think any of us are very convinced that Cork were going to beat him. I know it was kind of a strange game and a lot of wides and it was a stop-start kind of thing to it, but I don't think anyone was really very confident of Cork taking him out. You know what I mean? Like that style is unproven.
But the longer the match went on, you knew Cork didn't believe they were good enough to win.
Yeah, Yeah.
Do you not feel that like what Cork are doing, like what's the point in them losing the same old way, hitting every puck out long? And let's take into consideration that Seamus Harnedy, who won 2 puckouts in a row towards the latter end of the first half, he had to go off injured. Yeah. Like I think if Cork are actually going to make inroads here, that they need to find a new way to play the game. And that short stuff, a couple of times it worked. I remember a Tim O'Mahony score towards the latter end of the first half. I just thought this is the most glorious hurling I've seen. The way they worked it. Do you remember that goal they scored? I think it was Robbie O'Flynn in the league game at the start of the year against Waterford. It was just like short puck out, constant running off the shoulder, constant options, hand pass and bang back at the net. I think Cork are heading in the right direction. I don't think they'll win the All-Ireland this year, but I like that they're trying to do something and work with the type of players they have, Shane Brophy.
I think they're going to stick it. I don't think they're going to throw it out after 1 year, particularly with Donald O'Grady back. But I think a lot of it depends on the opposition. Like the opposition are just not going to stand out of the way and let them run through them. And like you mentioned that the goal they got was nearly a true of what they're trying to do. I think it was Niall O'Leary starting it out from defence and it ended up with who finished it? Shane Kingston finished it off. I don't know. I'm not convinced. I think they probably go away from that match a little bit late at Cork. I was expecting a small bit more, and you can see it on the sideline. Right up for it. And look, the 2-goal salvo just before half time really sticking them, and the missed penalty as well. That was the key period of the game where Cork probably should have gone in a couple of points up, and they were ended up to 6 down. And once you go 6 down to Limerick, it's very, very hard to reel them in. They're one team. I've always the last few years. If you're behind on the scoreboard, it's very, very hard to overcome them because they're so well set up to defend the lead.
I think Shane, your mic is breaking up just a tiny little bit there at the moment. I'm not entirely sure what that is, but we might just touch on a couple of the other games. Since we have talked a little bit about Cork Limerick. A couple of weeks ago, we were talking all about Dublin hurling, and I had to defend them to the hilt. Obviously, I'm playing club hurling up there for the last 11 years. But Galway coming to town, expecting to canter through to the Leinster final. I have to say, I was delighted to see Dublin come through this one, 118 to 114. And, I think it put to bed a lot of this talk about manufactured hurlers, because there's a few hurlers that have come through that are serious stickmen. I think Conor Burke has really established himself in the last year. Donald Burke, Cian O'Sullivan didn't have a great game, but I think he's another tasty player in the core forward. James Madden had sadly buried his father the day before. He goes out and plays a great game as well. Owen O'Donnell. Is Owen O'Donnell the best fullback in the country? Let either of you take that one.
Yeah, and the worst thing was when did he get a little niggle at the end, and he
did.
That's the. But I was very impressed with him. I was actually on the phone to Fintan O'Connor, the Kerry manager, on the way down to Kerry train. He was asking how the match was going. I said, Galway are in trouble here, and it wasn't even half time. I just thought it was madness out of Galway. The way they approached that game, going for goals early. It was just one of them days that it's very hard to, if the concentration is off by a small bit, and let's say the shooting goes, it's very hard to get it back. And I was really impressed with Dublin, just the way that they kind of said, John, we have a chance here, and if we stick to our principles of play, we'll get a result here. And I won't say it was comfortable, but they always looked like they were going to get over the line. And as you said, Shane, saying they've loads of hurlers. They just need, almost like the Anthony Daly days, they just need to get over the line, get a few wins, and people hate playing them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say Shane O'Neill is sick of the sight of Matty Kenny at this stage after the club runs too, Shane Brophy.
Absolutely. That's not only Matty seems to know maybe how Shane O'Neill teams are going to play, but like, look, I suppose simply Dublin looked like a team that were ready to play a championship match. Galway didn't. Like, I thought they were very, very poor. Like, so they were. Like, you think you give Dublin every credit, but like when Conor Whelan got the goal to bring it back to 2 points early in the second half, you said, now Galway down, they've got the bit of a boost now to kick on, and there was nothing when that goal went in. There was no the response actually came from Dublin, and I think that's going to be the worrying thing for Galway, that psychologically they were very, very flat on the day. Like, there was just. Like, there's rumours that maybe Joe Canning hadn't trained properly in the 3 weeks, and he had a bit of a hand injury. Look, he missed frees that he just doesn't miss. Like, so, and like,
he missed 10 chances, believe it or not.
It's crazy. Like, and like, there has to be there's an explanation for that, and that probably is that he's missed time. It's like anything. If you miss training sessions or you miss a session on the ball while stay sharp, or miss free taking sessions, you're going to lose your touch, and it looked like that was going to happen. Like, okay, it's. I think Galway, like, I think themselves and Waterford will be the two angry teams in the back door, because I think both of them will feel they didn't show their true best in the matches so far. So, but they could end up playing each other, and that could be absolutely rip-roaring the qualifier. So it could.
Yeah, it looks like a bear pit back there. But I have to say, I couldn't believe what Galway were doing. They put Joseph Cooney in full forward. He actually played fullback for a while last year because he was man-marking TJ Reid, and he was in full forward, I suppose, with the idea that he'll rumble Owen O'Donnell, and will create because O'Donnell will want to stay fullback, will create a mismatch elsewhere. They got nothing out of Brian Kincannon at all. Cian O'Callaghan took him to the cleaners. Adrian Toohey playing wing forward. I haven't really understood this whole switch at all, I have to say. He was cornerback when they won the All-Ireland a few years ago. Cathal Mannion, who's been in hurler of the year for him, they got almost nothing out of him. Sean Loftus taken off at half time as well. Going for goals earlier. Was there a bit of arrogance to this performance, Golden Shane?
Sure, it looks like it, and probably we're being unfair to the Galway lads. It mightn't have been an instruction, but it kind of looked like, right, we'll put this to bed early. We'll kind of rest up. We'll have a look at the Wexford Kilkenny match, and our preparation for the Leinster final starts in an hour's time. Like, I don't know, maybe you probably just need that leader on the field to. Well, it's not like they don't have him. The Cooneys, the Cannings, like, just right. Okay, we're after having 5-6 chances. We're after having 7-8 wides, whatever. Okay, now it's just we'll go back to our just tapping over the bar. Just get the scoreboard ticking over. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't give Dublin any reason now to think that they have a chance in this game. And as the match went on, Dublin just grew, and the confidence shone, and like, they hunted in packs, and but they were well able to hurl outside the pack too. And I don't know, it just shows that, let's say, even from a coaching point of view, it's very hard for there to be a U-turn if the attitude isn't right at the start, whether that comes from management or whether it's the players. But the minute they cross the white line and things aren't right, it's very, very hard to make changes to get it back.
Shane Brophy, this is one for you now, right? A few weeks back, I was doing the hurling power rankings with Michael Verney, trying to figure out who's number one. I think unanimously we agreed that Limerick were number one. We also agreed that Galway were number two, and else all the comments coming in were saying the same. Now, I was fighting hard to say Tip were 3 and Waterford were 4, and then, there's plenty of other teams in the reckoning after that too. What's your 1 to 4 now? It's very hard to call.
Oh yeah, like as I said earlier, I don't think nobody's put out an outstanding performance so far. I think it's Limerick. I think it's still Limerick 1. I'd say probably Tip will have to go number 2
by default almost.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Galway will probably slip to 3, but like I'd still give the benefit out that they'll turn this on. But I think one thing. I think Shane, are the Galway management overthinking things too much? Like Daithí Burke, probably one of the best full back of the last 5 or 6 years out at centre back. Like why take him out of his strong position? I know they're worried about Gerard McInerney at 6 and maybe he's not as good as he was, but like don't take Daithí Burke out of where he's strong. Like they played Pádraig Mannion at 6 through most of the league and they seem to have abandoned that. Like so I think I wouldn't be surprised if we see Galway go back to basics and whoever they play in the qualifiers get their best players in their best positions and take it from there.
Yeah, so Golden Shane, what would you put as the power rankings? Maybe 1 to 4. Now, I find it very difficult because I think Cork could give a lot of teams a rattle. I'm not saying they're number 1, but what Kilkenny did there, that kind of softened my cough a little bit. I thought maybe they were further down the rankings, but to come through that Wexford game the way they did, I thought they were absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and I listened to that one and the power rankings, and like you could argue, like it was spot on at the time because we'd nothing else to go on. The league was a bit of shadow boxing, and you're kind of looking at, you're probably thinking in right, Galway on their day could maybe beat Limerick. Do you know what I mean? Tip on their day could be Limerick, and you're kind of going that way about it. Like the power rankings now would have to be Limerick, Tip, Kilkenny, and Dublin in the top 4 just because they've less matches to go. You know what I mean? But saying that, if you ask Liam Cahill and Waterford, or if you ask Kingston and Cork, could they beat Kilkenny? Could they beat Tip? Could they beat Dublin? They'd all say they could. So it just shows, particularly with COVID and the lead in is short, and the homework is tight. The power rankings go out the window really here.
They kind of do. And by the way, anyone out there, if you want to get your comments in on YouTube or Facebook, we can actually bring them up on the screen if you want to comment there on the Nina Guardian Facebook or YouTube page. Also, comment on Twitter and we'll try and get to that as well.
Just talking on the last match in Leinster, like, do you think, like, arguably that was the best Wexford performance, I think, under Davy Fitz, but psychologically, can they come back from that in a fortnight?
Isn't it the same every year? It really just depends on who they draw. Just if they drew, and I know there's certain teams you can kind of bypass the first round if you don't get drawn early. I mean, we were hoping for that last year when Tipperary missed the first round of the draw, if I remember correctly, and you feel like, right, maybe you can get some of your injuries together and that sort of stuff.
Like I could see Wexford beating the Cork, but would Clare be? I don't know if they'd have enough power to beat Clare. You
know what I wonder? What's the mood in the panel like? Because Conor McDonald, or sorry, not Conor McDonald, Liam McGovern came off, Diarmuid O'Keefe came off, different players came off, and rather than bringing on the likes of Harry Keogh and maybe Conor Devitt, lads who've been there for a few years, Joe O'Connor, they brought back on lads who were actually already in bits and had already gone off with cramp, and you're bringing them back on again. What's the mood like in a panel there? I mean, Shane Stapleton, you obviously have dealt with panels for many years. Doing something like that happening, what effect does that have on panel morale?
Yeah, and like, let's be honest, Davy has kind of short windows with panels. So let's say, like, you'll have your favourites and you'll have fellas that you think will be the go-tos, and then that's very hard to keep everyone happy. Particularly in the league when there's the short run into championship. I think it just depends. Going back to like what we said about Galway on the field with Kenny and Cooney and co. Daithí Burke, let's say it depends on the leaders in the dressing room. They have to take that out of Davy's hands in some sense. Let's say, like, they'll be well known about the Wexford players trying to hold on to Davy a couple of years ago and stuff. So it just depends. There's that trust and faith still there in the manager. When you lose a tight one, you probably overanalyze and you say, if we did this and if we did that. So it'll just really test the mental of the senior players group really in Wexford. And if they can kind of get things going, and if they have a decent response in training this week, like I've said it for the third time, you wouldn't like to play them in championship because they can if under day they can trouble you and defeat you. So I just think that the Davies explosive kind of training and it's so intense even emotionally, it'll be a lot to come back for them.
Yeah, like you think they were probably just just about getting over it, and then they had last night's under-20 result. I'd say the mood in Wexford hurling must be horrible at the moment. And look, full credit to Kildare. I actually watched the second half. I want to give a shout out to Cian Hogan from Lurray. He was involved in the Kildare backroom team. Look, I just thought the work rate of the Kildare players was insane last night. The hooking and blocking, they just chased everything. I think they were down to 14 men for 45 minutes. Then went down to 13 men, went a point behind, and still scored the last 2 points. That was insane what they did last night. And who's to say they won't turn over Offaly next week in a quarter final? And full credit to Kildare, but it must be a very, very hollow day in Wexford, I'd say.
Yeah, I was in Croke Park last weekend to watch the Leinster hurling semi-final double, and during extra time of that game between Kilkenny and Wexford, I was looking down thinking it's kind of like these poor gladiators suffering for entertainment. Back in the ancient times, getting their disemboweled and all that just for the crowd to have a bit of enjoyment for it. But I was thinking these players, whatever mistakes they make at this stage, you couldn't say a word against them. Yeah. But there was so many things happened over the course of the game. It's very hard to analyse it, but you do have to come back to the power of this Kilkenny panel. To get 1-8 off your bench is some going. And then TJ Reid, heading into his 34th year, that he still produces that performance, ends up with, I think, 4th in place, set up a few more. And Owen Cody, he's really announced his arrival at 1-5, obviously en route to Ballyhale winning the All-Ireland there a couple of years ago. We all saw what he did in some of those games, and obviously playing the final against Borrisoleigh too. But do you feel that this Kilkenny team can actually win an All-Ireland now, Shane Brophy? If you take Limerick out of it, who they beat the last time they met in the championship, I mean, maybe include them. Can they do it?
I think they can. I never say never with a Brian Cody team. We keep saying they're probably not the star-studded team, and they're not the star-studded team they've had before, but he still gets them to perform every day to go out. Sorry for that.
Brian Cody there.
It's not him. But I don't know, you think there'd be strong favourites to beat Dublin, but I think Dublin will light them up and think, okay, if there's a chance to win Leinster, it's here. But Owen Cody was excellent. Walter Walsh looked like he had his spring in his step coming off the bench. He's just finding them every year. He's getting them to perform. Paddy Deegan is sort of a warrior there, a cornerback too. He's one of those players you love to have in your team, and you'd hate to be marking against. You never say never. Definitely, if they come up against us, they're still sore over 2019. So,
I think a lot with Kilkenny, it's all about the spine, isn't it? If they could, even I won't say break even, but if they could dominate from if they've one of the best goalies, do you know what I mean? If they can go from 3 to 14 and win them key positions, I think they've loads of hurlers in the corners and the sides to bring it home. It's just if you can kind of get at their centre spine, which maybe hasn't been as strong as it always was. But as I said, the Brian Cody Kilkenny team, the latter stage of an All-Ireland final or All-Ireland Championship, oh God.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move on to football now. And as I said, get your comments in there on YouTube, Facebook or Twitter. We'll bring them up on screen and have a little chat about them. But it's the Munster Senior Football semi-final this weekend. Kerry are coming to town. Tipperary are obviously Munster champions after beating Kerry last year. So Semple Stadium, Saturday, 7 p.m. Shane Brophy, massive task.
Huge. It's as big as they come, and to be playing Kerry at any time, you want to be coming in with positivity and momentum, but I suppose Tip are probably coming in probably the worst shape possible, and then Kerry are, what have we seen this year? They look very, very potent up front, they're going for goals, they're full of pace and power, but look, you like to think where Tip's backs are to the wall now, but look, they are defending Munster champions, they're at home. The injury situation seems to be improving. You just love to think if anything else would see them produce a big performance, and you just hope that whatever happens at the weekend, that the true Tipperary panel that we know that's there will show their best. And look, if it's not enough to win, it's not enough to win, but you just want to see a performance that we know is better than what we saw in the league. And the league performance, or even in the win over Wicklow, were a long way off what we know is there.
Yeah, Shane, just looking over some of the results that Kerry have had in the league this year, they drew 118-49 against Dublin, coming from well behind to take over that game. Scored 6 goals against Tyrone, beat Clare very well by putting up 322. And outside of that draw with Dublin, in their division within the league, they won their games against Galway and Roscommon by an average of 14 points. This is a different game, different team than we saw produced. Well, sent out by Peter Keane last year when they lost to Cork. They look like a team that are mad for goals, mad for scores, and are a bit of a wounded animal.
Yeah, and let's say like that's the problem. Just even with reference back to the Cork match, that's going to be a big problem for Tip this year. Do you know, let's say like so they're not going to make the same mistakes like they did last year against Cork. And leaving a team in it and you know giving them a chance to get a late goal and in knockout football, then you're paying the ultimate price. Ironically, let's say when COVID resumed last year, they ended the league well, but I think their form and challenge match was supposed to be unbelievable last year. They played Clare and a couple more, and like they were just supposed to be like no one saw the Cork result coming. And I think they I suppose it was well documented that they were maybe trying a system to take on Dublin in the latter stage of the championship, and they never got there. For Tip, I just echo what Shane Brophy says. Look, it's a massive game for Tip, reigning Munster champions, and it's a draw you didn't want, but yet you just want to see that spirit and steel that we all know the lads have, and they don't owe us anything. But it was just great for them to go toe-to-toe against Kerry, give it everything and see where it gets them.
But yeah, but that was, well, I'd say Shane, like that, the Shane Stapletons, like that was, or Golden Staple, that I suppose that was the one thing from the league that, as well as the performances, that the spirit wasn't there. Like, and that was the worrying thing for me. Even the Longford game, like the match was over essentially once the Longford goal went in and they were only 3 points down. You never thought there was something coming. Like, and look, maybe you could put it down to maybe some of the guys that weren't there, and I suppose that the word is that Robbie Kiley and Bill Maher should be ready to go, and Conal Kennedy will be back, and Stephen O'Brien hopefully will be ready to go, and maybe we'll be getting our best team on the field this weekend. But look, that doesn't mean it will count for much. Like you want to be coming in against Kerry fully fit, and maybe not hoping you get 50 minutes out of Bill Maher and 50 minutes out of Robbie Kiley, which is probably what it's going to be. And then you're already down Alan Campbell, one of the unsung heroes of that group. Like I suppose his presence in the dressing room will be missed the last few weeks. So it's interesting to see what type of approach do Tip take. Do they go all out attack for this and go down swinging, or do they try and keep it tight in the first half and get to half time maybe within touching distance? I don't know, Golden State, what do you think?
I think it probably comes back to Stephen O'Brien. I don't know how fit Stephen O'Brien is going to be, and maybe Paddy Feehan and a couple more around the middle of the field. I think if they felt that they could get their hands on the ball around the middle of the field, I think they could maybe push up on Kerry and just play Kerry at their own game and just say, right, look, it's up to you now to try to stop Michael Quinlivan, Conor Sweeney, Philip Ryan, whoever might be inside. Realistically, after the league campaign that they've had, I think it'd be a safer option just to maybe sit Foxy in for a while and see how the game goes and break it down into quarters and just use the water breaks and go again and things like that. But I think Kerry will always say, I think it was Darragh O'Shea who said in his autobiography or on the newspaper articles, like that every time they played Tipperary, they always knew good minor teams and good under-20 teams and whatever. And they always said that we don't give these a sniff now. Put football out of their head and make them go back and play hurling. You can imagine that Kerry will know that the underage profile has changed totally in the last 6-7 years. So I would think Kerry are going to go all guns blazing here for a Kerry point of view, and also as an added bonus just to trying to hurt Tipperary football development. So I think with that in mind, I would be surprised. I know it's not David Power when he got the job was saying we want to play attacking football and we want to go 15-15 and whatever. Just my experience with these kind of teams, like we were on the Liam Kearns was on the 10 minutes away from getting up to Division 1. The more better teams you have, you just have to stay in the game for a while, and probably Foxy is just the ideal man just to sit in front, particularly when he said Shane Brophy that Alan Campbell isn't there. It's a massive ask for the lads.
Yeah, I just wonder. Just continue the conversation. I just wonder. Looking at the Kerry Clare game and the amount of scores Kerry got from cheap Clare turnovers, like misplaced passes and stuff like that. That maybe do Tip have to think? Okay, one thing we've got to do. We can't turn the ball over cheaply. That's fine. But okay, even if you kick the ball in long and you don't win it, at least you have players back. You like if you kick it in or you don't win it, okay, at least you have bodies that if Kerry have to come back against you. They're not starting from midfield or the 65-yard. They're starting from maybe the 21, and you could get a bit of that. If you did have to go along, there's a lesser risk of maybe Kerry doing you going the other way. As I think the Kerry's goal just before half time came from a misplaced hand pass in the middle of the field, and bang, they were gone, like, and it was in the back of the net within 5 seconds. It'll be interesting to see how Tip go, and I definitely think I don't think it can be underestimated how much that half back line that was ripped out of our team in the league wasn't there. He had Maher, Fahy, and Kiley, like, not only were defensively but offensively very pacey players that can break the line. They weren't there, and I even think it'll help Brian Fox too. That those four guys can nearly read each other's play. That if that's the foursome in the half back line again, it should give us a bit of a springboard offensively as well. So look, it's hard to see he's winning, but I just think to have half a sniff, we need our best players on the team, and I think we're probably going to see that this weekend.
And also, Shane, actually, just to even add on to that as well, did Dublin show in the league that they are susceptible to a high ball into the square? Conor O'Callaghan and Kieran Kilkenny are obviously exceptional players, but Tipperary have some quality inside forwards too, who are well able to fetch a ball. So is that maybe a route to a bit of joy?
Yeah, and I was just about to say when Shane Brophy is speaking there, because let's say like about kicking the ball and going long, and let's say like ironically in the first league match against Limerick in the Gaelic rounds, Limerick were far superior and should have gone into half time well ahead, but Tip played the marks really well. Sean O'Connor caught a couple. Connor was a threat inside of the high ball. Just that kind of half turn over the shoulder, and the lads can do that, particularly if Kiley and them Jack Kennedy could get on the ball. Kevin Fahy, lovely kickers of the ball. So I think that might be something that they will look at. It's hard to kind of compare yourself to Dublin because let's say I think Kerry will set up probably differently to Tip than they will Dublin. But I definitely there's something. I definitely will be trying it early. Do you know what I mean? So you're working the ball out. You know, if you get a sharp kick out away, or if you could win a break around the middle field, get the pedals going forward. So get Bill up the line. You know, a little ball back to Kiley, bang. You know, Sean O'Connor, Mikey, Philip, Connor, any of them can either turn and go or take your mark, slow the game down, push up on Kerry's kick out and see how you go. But it's just about staying in the game, as we said, or it's just about maybe getting a bit of confidence. The last thing you want is going the other way, and let's say Kerry getting a couple of early goals from soft turnovers, maybe like Clare happened. You know, like we definitely have to keep out of the middle. And so let's say given David Moran and Sean O'Shea and Paddy Clifford, all these, let's say, great kickers into David Clifford and co. Gainey, God almighty. Do you know what I mean? I have nightmares about Mark one.
When you face into a team like Kerry, and I mean, nobody out there is putting any money on Tipperary to win this game. Like, what sort of mentality do you have when you go out as just absolutely outrageous underdogs like this? And like, all the players are going to go out and give everything they have, but I'm sure many of them in their hearts already think that, look, we just want to give performance here. So what do you say to players to try and make them believe as much as possible, Shane, from Golden?
I suppose it's kind of probably going back to matchups. I remember back in, was it 2016, we thought our matchups were fairly decent. We had Kieran MacDonald and we had Alan Campbell and we had Jimmy Feehan, and we kind of thought that we could maybe break even / get a bit of an upper hand. But I tend the video analysis team in Tipperary have always been great, you know what I mean, and they'll have a lot to say in how we set up. I just think looking at, I don't know how many times as minor coach, I think we played Kerry 3, 4, 5 times and we're beaten all time by him. They're just almost better in real life than they are even on a video. Do you know what I mean? I just think it's very hard. let's say, to look at someone that is so two-footed let's say on a pitch, and then maybe that transfers over to a video analysis session. They're just so good. As I said, we were back in 16. We actually thought, maybe foolishly, that we could win a Munster final back then. Started okay. Jimmy Feehan got a goal and things like that. But they just creep away and they push up. And that was the first time we ever saw that. Kerry started to go +1 on our kick out, just with the confidence that they were going to win it. And just it just makes you. I won't say doubt yourself, but it just makes you kind of look to see, right, what can we do here now to turn the tide, and that's very hard against experienced Kerry teams.
So, I don't know, Shane Brophy, coming into this game, how do you best put a gloss on this to kind of suggest, well, there's a chance to do this, that, and the other? Is it like, what's success here? Because there's no Charlton Cup, there's no backdoor, anything like that. So it's unbelievably difficult situation for David Power and co.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And like, we're talking to David Power and talking to Conor Sweeney in the last week, and I think they admitted themselves, like, they're not going to shy away from the fact that they're massive underdogs and nobody's giving them a chance. Like, I think you've just got to take their chances. Look, if you get the 2 goal chances we got against Mayo last year, like, against the good teams, you just can't miss chances. If we get a couple of early goal chances, I think we've got to try and go for them. I think. Look, it's a lot of it's been said that a Kerry are defensively, if they're ran at, they're in trouble. But I think any team that's ran at can be got at. Like, so, look, I think Tip they've got to gamble. Like, I think sometimes when you're playing Kerry, you can be spooked by the jersey, and maybe you're not prepared to try things you would probably try against Cork. I think it's a game where you've got to be prepared to try things, and try things maybe that are lower risk, because maybe taking a risky hand pass in the middle of the field is more risky than maybe sticking the ball in long. Because if you stick it in long and you don't win it, you have enough bodies back to maybe get a defensive structure in place to maybe stop Kerry advancing back on you as well. So I suppose another thing would be making sure that there's not 3,000 Kerry fans in the ground now, the 3,500 fucking tickets that are there. That'd be one thing. Like, so just not small little things like that. And look, maybe getting Michael Quinlivan if Michael Quinlivan does something well within 5 or 10 minutes, I think he's off. He's one of those players, he can be streaky. If Mikey gets off to a slow start, his head might drop. But if he gets off to a good start, like, he could be off. And there's an arrogance in Michael Quinlivan. Like, he on his day, he thinks he's as good as anyone. But you just don't know what day that's going to come. We saw it in the Munster final last year when we sticking balls over the bar from the both wings. Like, and you just hope him and Sweeney, if they get enough quality service, they will score against anyone. I don't care. Like, so it's about getting the quality service into them.
And let's say just on MQ, like, let's say, like, and he is that good. Like, I remember Liam Kearns used to always say that every opposition manager that we played, they'd always say, oh yeah, but like, you've Michael Quinlivan, you've Conor Sweeney inside. It changed everyone's, like, if there was a transfer market, let's say, people would snap him up. And you're right, Shane Brophy. Just with last year's Munster final was the real example of that. The lad started well. Mikey was shown he was unmarkable at times. Some kicks that I think he was going maybe diagonal high at one stage flew over the black spot, and you just need that to happen, and maybe just put things back on Kerry a small bit. Like, God, these are supposed to be Division 4 team. Do you know what I mean? They're not going away. And I think one thing that should be said as well, if you have Foxy and Kylie and these kind of lads on Shocks, Shane O'Connell, they're all well used to playing the defensive game as well. You know what I mean? Like, so, like, right, we were criticised towards the end of our term about maybe being too defensive. But ironically enough, by getting numbers behind the ball against a team like Kerry, and you gain possession, you're breaking at pace into green grass, which could be a good thing for, Jack Connell. Conor Bowe, we haven't mentioned. Like, Conor Bowe has been a massive bonus to Tip football this year, and fair play to him. You'd be like, if you're a young man like him, I say he can't wait to have a go at some of these fellas, and it's just going to be one of them days. Can they win it? They have a small chance. But let's say they've proven us wrong before, and yes, we used to always say in the dressing room, this would be we could lose a league match to someone that we thought we might beat, and then go out and take, I don't know, Donegal or someone in the stadium. It's just kind of typical Tipperary, like last year, struggled to beat Limerick, and then look really strong against Cork. So it could be something like that. It might be, if you say enough prayers, it might happen.
Let's hope so. Anyway, also the Tip under-20 footballers are playing against Limerick on Thursday evening, 7:30 at Semple Stadium. Shane, Brophy, good chance to kind of get off to a good start there?
Hard to know. I suppose Shane Stapleton or Golden-Kilfeacle mentioned Sean O'Connor. I think Sean O'Connor's availability for Saturday will depend on the result on Thursday, because the eligibility requirements of Tip are beaten. I think we'll see Sean O'Connor some part of the Saturday. If not, he's going to be held back, because he is himself and Mark O'Mara, I think, they're the two guys that are doubling up. So look, it's a difficult one. Look, we haven't won a game in the grade since the 2015 All-Ireland semi-final against Dublin. But then the last 2 years, Tip could have easily beaten both Limerick in the two first-round games. So look, you think, is there a bit of luck? It's hard, because Limerick definitely have a more of a structured approach. Like Paul Kinnerk and that academy really seems to be motoring at underage down there. We're like Paddy Christie is doubling up as Tip senior football coach, and he's admitted himself he probably hasn't been. It's been difficult for him, because he's put in his under-20 manager. He's had no colleges games to look at. He's had no schools games to look at. No club games. He admitted himself speaking to me earlier this. He's more or less relied on the likes of Paddy O'Flaherty, Kevin Mulrine, Paddy O'Gorman, the selectors, to do a lot more the legwork, trying to put the squad together through the trial process. And like he said himself, that in one way, that's where Limerick's strength is. They know what they've had coming through a few years. This group are more or less being put together, but that could actually help Tipperary, as he said himself, that they're going to have to keep their game plan pretty simple. Just keep focus on skills, get guys working hard, and maybe a bit more off the cuff football, and it might just work out for them, and it might just get them the win. And definitely underage football, Tip could do with a win, and it might just come tomorrow night. And who's not to say it won't come? But I think there's more. I would say there's more doubts coming into the game about Tipperary than probably what Limerick were coming into the game. I don't know what Gold and Shane would think about that.
Yeah, no, it's spot on. And you remind me, I was talking to Paddy Flaherty and Kevin Mulrine, and fair play to these guys for going in and trying to kind of help out, because it's a tough 6 or 7 weeks for them. Do you know what I mean? So it was an impossible task for Paddy Christie and David Power and the senior management to try to look after both, the way COVID went, and like you rightly said, Shane Brophy, to think that our last under-20 or under-21 win was the All-Ireland semi-final against Dublin in 2015 or whatever it was, you'd never have thought it, what is it, 4 or 5 years of beaten by Limerick by a point. I know we were beaten, I think, in 2018 by Cork. But even you just couldn't trust form, let's say, so was this the first year of 2018? I think, was this the first year that, as minors, this is the first year that they went to under 17? So that had its challenge as well. And I think talking to the lads just prior to going to the match tomorrow, I think there's only 1 or 2 from that 20 that played that night, Toggin tomorrow night. I think is it Callan Scully, you'd know him better, Shane, and me, a good goalie, but a soccer goalie, let's be honest. Do you know what I mean? So he starts. Christy English, I think. Mark O'Mara, I think might have a bit of an injury. So that's a massive change for a small pool of players. You know what I mean? And I know there's a Kevin Hayes, Johnny Ryan, Keith Ryan, Devin Ryan, Max Hackett, Kyle Shelley, Gavin Whelan, and Paddy Creedon are all with the Tip 20 hurlers, and that's just the way Croke Park want. They don't want duels, and I suppose it's just a disappointing thing from the football fans in the county, because John Devan is a great setup, and you want the best for them 20 hurlers, but it is kind of mad to see that 2, and I know different issues have come turn up, but for Kyle Shelley and Paddy Creedon to be on the Tip senior football panel at the start of the year and not be there for Paddy O'Flaherty and Kevin Mulrine and Paddy Christie, that's a big blow, because it just shows the importance really of the crop of seniors we have, and there's going to be a few lean years coming up when them senior players decide to retire.
Yeah, you just hope maybe it's just a 1 year thing where the under-20 hurling and football runs concurrent to each other. Maybe if it gets to next year that you could play the under-20 football February, March, April, and have the hurling later on, where you could allow the dual players to thrive. And it's hard. It did look strange. Like you have Paddy Creedon, who played against, I think he came on as a sub against Wicklow, and suddenly he's not playing under-20 football later on in the year. So look, it's just something I put to Paddy Christie. I said he understands, like, the pull will always be to hurling if you have to make a choice. And I suppose you can understand Kyle Shelley and Paddy Creedon have to make a call, because like it's hard to, it's just impossible to double up when both are running side by side at the moment. And look, you know, they'll always pick hurling at the end of the day, and like it's good. But then at the end of the day, you have guys who want to be there on the under-20 football final are there tomorrow night, and look, they could get the win over Limerick, and they could be the guys that just gives underage football the county a big boost.
And then to move finally, I suppose, to the Tipperary under-20 hurlers, they're going to be out in a few days against Waterford. Last year came up short in the Munster final, having beaten Clare and then Waterford after extra time, which was an absolutely brilliant game. But losing 2 days before Christmas to Cork, who will actually play that 2020 final against Dublin this coming weekend. How are you feeling about this team, Shane? Obviously, All-Ireland's the 2 years beforehand at under-20 and under-21 level. But again, we're all operating in the dark a little bit. Kevin Maher is going to be captain this year. Where are you at with this Tip team?
They lost the Munster final. Cork were the better team in the night. I don't think Tip played anyway well in the evening. I thought their tacticals, maybe how they set up their forwards, was a bit questionable. But like I thought it was in terms of individual talent, I thought we were decent last year. I think we're as strong this year. There's an awful lot of last year's under-17 team gone in there. Like, that was a very good under-17 team. Like, I don't think they should be, just because they lost an extra time to Limerick in the final, I don't think you should take away from that. Like, that the game could have gone either way. I suppose the interesting thing, like, they played all their challenge matches without Aaron Brown and Devin Ryan, and it looks like they're going to be available for the game. Looks like their transfers are going to go through in time. So, look, that's going to be a boost. I definitely think Aaron Brown is probably after Brian and Barry Hogan. He's number 3. Some people might say it's Owen Collins. I think Collins probably benefited from the fact that Aaron Brown couldn't be picked for the last while. So I think that's a boost. Probably potentially him having. Will they throw him straight back into the goals maybe after playing Enda Dunphy in the challenge matches? I'm not so sure. Like, it'll be a difficult one for John Devan to go with. It's, I suppose, Shane would know maybe the lie of the land of how the Kickham's casual transfer thing, it's in your neck of the woods of how difficult, or maybe how, I'd say difficult, but how
yeah, to be
it's a sore one down there. It's one I think Cashel and Kickham's could have done without.
Yeah, no, totally. And let's say it'd be interesting. Golden are playing Cashel in the Crosscut Cup tonight, so I know there might be a few more days left in an appeal. We'll be interested to see.
Tonight, I think has to be in, or that's it.
Okay, because let's say like the lads need game time now again to get themselves back in. I think everyone is the same. I know Shane's saying to be a bit more, let's say, like in the urban areas, there is a bit more transfers, you know what I mean? Let's say from fellas that maybe go to college and stay up there, or maybe go into a club and whatever. Down here, they never really kind of end. They never really end well. I think maybe we've been kind of benefiting a couple times, let's say, of kids that might come as under 12s or under 13s and kind of stay on, and it kind of goes under the. But I think as adults, I'm scratching my head to try to think of one that people benefit from. You know, let's say like the Upper Church Tracy's one, like it's just kind of messy. I think both clubs actually kind of handle it fairly well, to be fair to them. Kickham's, I know maybe appeals and whatever, but early days, I think they kind of made a decision as a club. And Cashel was like, it's a very difficult one for Cashel, to be fair. Like, do you pass up a few players that could get you over the line to compete with Dan Breen, or do you stick with what you have and a good minor team or 20 team and you know, play the long road? I'll be honest, it's a no-win situation really, for a lot of them. From a Tip point of view, It'll be great to see the lads. Devin and Aaron are terrific hurlers, and Ger as well will be, I'm sure will be in Liam Sheedy's thoughts if he gets back playing senior. But maybe put it to bed and see how they get on. And I don't know, if some of these things, even like you'd never say never, they could go back to Kickham's a few years down the line. Do you know what I mean? You just don't know.
Like you look at the team, like Tip have like Kevin Maher, you have JD Devaney, you have Cian O'Kelly. Like Cian O'Kelly's in his third year in the grade. Like you have Max Hackett. Like there's an awful lot of quality there. Mikey O'Shea from Mullinahone, like he's a big, strong full forward. Peter McGarry was one that I was impressed with on the minor team there last year. So it's Paddy Creedon. I wouldn't have seen an awful lot of him, but anytime I hear guys out of Thurles and mid Tipperary, he's definitely one that thinks if he focused completely on hurling, he'd be a serious hurler as well. Like so, but like that. Like the Waterford team is very, very strong as well. They have a couple of guys who came off the bench in that league game against Tipperary who were very, very good earlier on the year. Michael Kiley is one in particular as well. Like so, like it's not you can't just put it down to home advantage that Tipperary should win this. But
I think on the likes of McGarry, Leamy, Shanahan, I think they were all brilliant minors. The championship didn't end up, after COVID. I think things kind of went against them. But I think that's a master stroke, John Devan. Just like the competition for places. Now I know they played in Kilkenny on Saturday. The competition for places are going to be massive, and no 20-year-old wants to lose out to a 17, 18-year-old either. There is that, it just drives things on, and these are big young fellas, you know what I mean? Like there's no small kind of 17-year-old coming on now playing 20s. Like these are big men, and they've gone through the S&C program, some of the development squads, and like I think this Tip 20s hurling team will take fair stopping.
And it'll be good to actually see them out in action, because we are kind of operating in a vacuum at the moment. By the way, congratulations to the Tip Intermediate Camogie team on the Munster title last weekend, and best wishes to the under-16 Camogie team in the All-Ireland semi-final against Kilkenny on Sunday. And also, Shane, I think you wanted to mention a jersey competition in the Guardian.
We have another jersey competition in the paper this week, readers competition. So we have that's coming up there. We have the Tennior. They are giving us one of the commemorative jerseys from last year. So if you pick up a copy of the Guardian, you can enter there this week. That's plenty of good analysis from the Tip game and a preview of the footballers. And I suppose just one thing that came through there last night, I suppose it slipped in under the radar, is that that's what the county board they've released the fixtures calendar for the club championship. Now that Tipperary are guaranteed to be hurling until the August bank holiday weekends, they've more or less nailed their colours to the mast. The club championship won't start till the last weekend of August, which I think it's fabulous. It's great that every club player now knows a bit of certainty. Late August through to middle of November is club season. They have their weekend structured, and I know from a football point of view, Shane, they've restored the quarterfinals in their football grades, and I know they had to be seen to do something for the hurling clubs. Say if they're giving football back. Their round, they had to be seen to give hurling back, and they can't give the divisional rounds back because there's not enough time. But they've created preliminary quarterfinals, which more or less it guarantees every club 4 games between group matches and either relegation or knockout quarterfinals. So I think clubs would be very, very happy with that. A dual club like yourself, Shane, or Golden. Like you're guaranteed 8 games, Golden-Kilfeacle this year between intermediate football and intermediate hurling. So that's something you've got to be very, very happy with.
Yeah, from a football point of view, I think the quarter-final, or so let's say like top in your group last year and going straight to a semi-final, made the latter stage of the football groups very kind of hit or miss. So I think that was a welcome thing, and fair play to the county board, to be fair to CCC, because let's say it'd be easy just to stick with what we did last year, because got all the games played. The Delta variant isn't going away, so they didn't stick. They didn't sit in their hands, and they did. I think the 2v3 in the preliminary quarterfinal kind of thing that will be very interesting, because now before, let's say, you'll be wondering how let's say like Tom McGrath is obviously saying who plays who in the first round and you get the first win, and the pressure's off a bit. Now that kind of changes. I wonder do people kind of make if you are maybe a dual club and you're going week to week and you think, oh sure, look, we're kind of through anyway, do you rest a few? So it'll be interesting. We'll only know when we're when we're through it. You know what I mean? Like people aren't going to be making decisions now, but no, I think a welcome thing, and fair play to the county board, because it's great to have a plan. If you have a plan, you can, you know what I mean? Like you can just you've something to aim for.
Yeah, I think definitely last year, like if you lost your first game, the county championship, you're under pressure. Whereas you're not. The first game really, the likelihood is if you lose your first two, you still have something to play for in the third game, maybe to finish third. So like, and I was even thinking about it from my own point of view with the Laura thing with Bonner. Like, there's half a chance of maybe Bonner being back. You don't have to. Like even the tough group like Laura would have in the Oreen with St Mary's and Cashel and Portrue, there's a fair chance if Laura finish maybe third, get to a preliminary quarter final, that's you're looking mid-October sometime. That could he be back at that stage? Like it gives players like that an opportunity. Like you don't have to maybe gamble on a guy's, not even thinking about Bonner, but you don't have to gamble on a guy's fitness even in the group stage, because you don't want to throw everything in. Into the one basket. So, and look, November are not ideal, but look, for the year that's in it, I think clubs will just accept it.
But as well, I don't know what you think, lads, but even it's a small thing, you know, like say like someone like Golden now, you know, ultimately a lot of times we'll be looking down maybe rather than looking up. But even if you're in third or fourth place going into your last group of games, and you're almost changing the psychic of it. You're saying, right, if we win now, we have a chance of qualifying, rather than, oh my God, if we lose this, we're into relegation. Do you know? Yeah. So like ultimately, it changes that. Look, right, well, as we get things right now in the last game, and we get out of this group, and anything can kind of happen. So I think it's good for teams. Just give them that little bit of hope, and you know, like if you're good enough, if you're good enough after that, you know what I mean, you have a chance.
Yeah, it's a fair point. Like, because actually, it's obviously done slightly differently in Dublin, but there's often 4 groups of 4, and 2 of the games might be played in the space of a week and a half in April. Yeah. And then some teams lose both, and you're actually out. And you know that after 2 weeks or 10 days or whatever, your entire season is done. You play league games, and people do take the league seriously in Dublin. But yeah, it's a bit of a joke. Like the setup of your championship and making you feel like you have something to play for a longer period of time is massive, because like training drops when you know you're out of a competition. Training drops. Lads are happy to find excuses not to go. Male or female, people are going to opt out if there's nothing really to play for anymore. But yeah, I think that's it. We've we've covered an awful lot on Tippcast episode 10 here. So from myself, Shane Stapleton, Shane Brophy, the Guardian, and Golden-Kilfeacle's Shane Stapleton as well. Thanks very much, and we'll see you again. Thanks, lads. Welcome to Tippcast by the Guardian.